Hello, friends. I hope you're all doing well by God's grace. Let's start the second part of the episode. Please like and subscribe the channel. The courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a stage where every lie that had ever been whispered in private was now being dragged into the light raw, unedited, and impossible to hide. Meri didn't respond. She didn't need to. The emails had already spoken for her. Every word, every instruction, every calculated move, it was all there, laid bare in front of everyone. If Robyn had been scripting the narrative all along, then the question hanging over the room was chilling. What else had she rewritten? The judge leaned forward, his expression heavier than before. Based on this new evidence, he said slowly, this court will proceed with a full review of the family trust, dating back to all changes made between 2018 and the present. A pause. In the meantime, all withdrawals and redistributions are hereby frozen. The words hit like a hammer. Kody slammed his fist on the table. Everything we built is falling apart because of this. And for the first time in a long time, Meri answered him. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. No, Kody, she said quietly, it's falling apart because of you. The room went still. Because everyone understood now, this was never just about money. It was about truth. And the deeper they dug, the uglier that truth became. Then came something no one expected. Unreleased footage. Footage that had never aired. Footage that had been cut, hidden, buried. Now subpoenaed. Now undeniable. The lights dimmed slightly as a screen lowered into place. The courtroom transformed into something else entirely. A theater. A place where reality, real, unfiltered reality, was about to play out. The clip began. Grainy. Unpolished. Real. A boom mic dipped into the frame. Someone off-camera muttered, rolling. Meri sat on a couch, tense but composed. Robyn entered moments later, glancing briefly toward the camera before sitting down, too stiff, too distant. The timestamp read, February 11th, 2020. Robyn spoke first. I'm trying to understand why you're making this harder, Meri. Meri looked at her steady. I'm not. I'm asking for my voice to matter. Robyn exhaled dramatically. But you left emotionally. You shut down. Kody had to move on. Meri leaned forward slightly. And you helped him do it. Behind my back. Financially. Legally. Spiritually. Robyn didn't flinch. I did what needed to be done. You weren't stable. You weren't reliable. The air in the courtroom tightened. Then Meri said it soft, but sharp enough to cut through everything. You rewrote the covenant. A voice off camera snapped to cut it. But the footage didn't stop. And that changed everything. Robyn blinked once. Then said the words that would echo through the courtroom long after the screen went black. So what if I did? Gasps erupted. The video cut. Silence followed. Not dramatic silence. Not suspenseful silence. But the kind that comes when the truth is too real to process all at once. Robyn shot to her feet. That footage was never meant to be released. It's out of context. The gavel slammed down. Sit down, Mrs. Brown. Kody stared at her. Not angrily. Not defensively. But like he was seeing her for the first time. And maybe he was. Meri's attorney stepped forward. Your Honor, this footage demonstrates intentional misrepresentation, not only to the family, but to the public. It shows a deliberate effort to control perception while making decisions that directly harmed my client. The judge nodded slowly. This is no longer interpersonal. A pause. This is systemic. And then it got worse. Internal production emails. From the network. Messages that painted a picture no one expected. Cut Meri's scenes. She's too emotional. Robyn's the emotional center. Shift the narrative. The judge leaned back. Are you alleging media manipulation? Meri's attorney didn't hesitate. Yes, Your Honor. At minimum, malicious editorial intent. Robyn shook her head frantically. They made me do it. They wanted me to lead the story. Kody turned sharply. You let them turn this into you. And for the first time, Meri looked at both of them. It always was. The truth wasn't leaking anymore. It was flooding. A new witness was called. Daniel Keats. A senior producer. A man who had been behind the scenes for years. Watching. Recording. deciding what the world would see and what it wouldn't. Were there directives to misrepresent Meri's role? The attorney asked. Daniel exhaled slowly. Yes. The courtroom erupted. We were told her story was too dark, not marketable. So we minimized her presence, unless it supported a specific narrative. And Robyn? She was positioned as the emotional center of the family. A document was shown. Meri needs to fade. Focus on Robyn's strength. Cut the confrontation scene. Daniel looked down briefly. We filmed a major argument between Meri and Robyn in 2020. It was real, honest, raw. A pause. It was never aired. Why? The judge asked. Because Robyn looked manipulative and Kody looked weak. That silence again. Heavier than before. Kody was called to the stand. This time, there was no escape. No deflection. No narrative left to hide behind. Did you approve removing Meri from financial agreements without her knowledge? Kody swallowed hard. I left things to Robyn. That's not the question. A pause. No. Did you know about the altered covenant? No. Did you confront it? I didn't want to believe it. Meri watched him. Not with anger, but with something far more final, understanding. Did you collude in deceiving Meri? Kody's voice broke. I didn't collude. I looked away. 3 words. And they changed everything. Then came the final question. Did you allow her assets to be redirected? A long pause. A breath. Yes. Robyn stared at him, shattered. Because in that moment, he didn't just tell the truth. He chose it over her. Did you work with the network to shape public perception of Meri? Kody closed his eyes. Then whispered yes. Chaos followed. But it didn't matter. Because the truth had already landed. Robyn was next. On the stand. Alone. Did you alter the covenant? A pause. Then yes. Did you inform the others? No. Did you attempt to remove Meri from the trust? Tears streamed down her face. I thought she wanted out. Did you ever ask her? Silence. Did you plan to tell her? More silence. The judge leaned forward. This is not spiritual leadership. This is financial manipulation. Robyn broke. I was afraid of losing everything, but fear didn't undo what had been done. Then came the numbers. Cold. Precise. Unforgiving. Nearly $4 million in total income. Meri's share? Less than 4%. Not overlooked. Not forgotten. Erased. The courtroom didn't react loudly this time. Because the truth had gone beyond shock. Now it was something else, undeniable. And then the letter. From one of the children. I hear things. Robyn crying. Sometimes yelling. Meri crying in the bathroom. I think we broke. There were no arguments after that. No objections. No strategy left. Just silence. Meri stood for the final time. No trembling. No hesitation. I didn't come here for revenge, she said. I came here because I refused to be erased. She looked at Kody. I asked you to see me. You chose not to. Then at Robyn. You didn't take control. You were given it, and you used it. Then finally at the judge. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision. Repeated. Protected. And hidden. A breath. Secrets don't protect anything. A pause. They destroy everything. And in that moment, the courtroom didn't just hear her. It believed her. The courtroom didn't erupt after Meri finished speaking. It stilled. Not the kind of silence that builds tension, but the kind that settles after something final has been said. Because there was nothing left to argue. No angle left to spin. No version of the story that could survive what had just been laid bare. Meri remained standing for a moment longer. Not for effect. Not for attention. But because after years of being unheard, she was making sure every last word had landed. Then, slowly, she sat down. And for the first time since this all began, she exhaled. The judge leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes moving between Kody, Robyn, and Meri. What he had just heard wasn't just testimony. It was a reconstruction of an entire reality, one that had been carefully controlled, edited, and manipulated for years. And now it was collapsing. Counsel, he said quietly, approach. Both legal teams moved forward. A hushed conversation followed, low voices, clipped phrases, legal language that couldn't quite mask the weight of what was happening. Because this wasn't routine anymore. This was uncharted territory. When they stepped back, the judge adjusted his glasses. This court will proceed with final considerations regarding liability and damages. A pause. But before that, there is one remaining matter. The room tightened again. The court has received notice of an additional submission, filed late last night. Meri's attorney didn't move. Kody's head lifted slightly. Robyn's fingers curled tightly around the edge of the table. The judge continued. A recorded call, dated 1 week prior to the initial filing of this case. Meri's eyes flickered, just slightly. Even she hadn't expected this. Given its potential relevance, the judge said, the court will allow it. The recording was cued. No dramatic setup. No warning. Just play. At first, there was only background noise. Then a voice. Robyn's. Soft. Urgent. We need to get ahead of this. Kody's voice followed. Tired. Frustrated. What does that even mean? It means, Robyn said, sharper now, we can't let her control the narrative this time. A pause. She is proof, Kody muttered. Another pause. Longer. Heavier. Then Robyn again, lower. Colder. Then we make it disappear. The recording stopped. No one breathed. No one moved. Even the judge didn't speak right away. Because that sentence, it didn't just suggest manipulation. It suggested something else. Something darker. Robyn shook her head immediately. That's not what I meant, but her voice was already unraveling. The judge raised a hand. Enough. His tone had changed. No longer measured. Now, decisive. This court has heard sufficient evidence to establish a clear pattern of intentional conduct aimed at exclusion, control, and concealment. He paused. And now, potential obstruction. Kody leaned back slowly. Like the ground beneath him had finally given way. Robyn looked like she couldn't breathe. Because for the first time, this wasn't just about what she had done. It was about what she had tried to do next. Meri didn't react outwardly. But something in her posture shifted. Not tension. Not anticipation. Just stillness. The kind that comes when you've already endured the worst, and anything else is just confirmation. The judge continued. This matter will be referred in full for criminal investigation, including, but not limited to, fraud, financial misappropriation, and possible obstruction of evidence. There it was. The line that couldn't be uncrossed. Robyn broke completely. I wasn't going to, but the words couldn't form. Because intent didn't matter anymore. Only evidence did. Kody closed his eyes. Not in denial. In realization. Because every moment he had looked away had led here. The judge turned toward Meri. Mrs. Brown, this court acknowledges the extent of what has been presented. A pause. And the cost of it. Meri nodded once. That was all. No tears. No speech. Because she had already said everything that needed to be said. The gavel came down. This session is adjourned. But this time, it didn't feel like an ending. Because as people slowly began to rise, as the room started to breathe again, as the weight of everything settled into something permanent, one truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because now, it wasn't just a courtroom story. It was an investigation. A deeper one. A wider one. One that would reach beyond the family, beyond the show, and into every place where the truth had been bent to fit a narrative. Meri stood. She didn't rush. Didn't look around. Didn't wait. As she reached the aisle, she paused briefly. Not for Kody. Not for Robyn. For herself. And then she walked out. Outside, the world was louder than ever. Breaking news alerts. Speculation. Chaos. But Meri didn't hear any of it. Because for the first time in years, the noise didn't matter. The truth did. And now that it was out, there was no putting it back. Next episode, Hook. As criminal investigators step in, new names begin to surface. Financial advisors. Network executives. Hidden accounts. And one shocking discovery. A property no one knew existed, funded entirely through redirected trust money. Who knew about it? Who signed off on it? And most importantly, who else is about to fall? The next chapter didn't begin in the courtroom. It began in silence, behind closed doors, where the real unraveling always starts. 3 days after the adjournment, federal investigators arrived. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with quiet authority, the kind that doesn't ask permission. Boxes were requested. Accounts were flagged. Names were pulled from documents no one thought would ever be opened again. And then, the discovery. It started as a line item. Buried. Ordinary looking. Flagstaff development allocation. But when the forensic team traced it, it didn't lead to a shared investment. It led somewhere else. A property. Private. Unlisted in any family disclosures. Owned under a shell structure. The name on the trust? Not Kody. Not the family. Robyn. When the address surfaced, everything shifted again. Because this wasn't just another financial maneuver. This was physical proof. Something you could stand in front of. Something you couldn't explain away. The news broke within hours. Hidden property linked to trust funds. New evidence in Brown family case. Investigators expand scope. Inside the temporary hearing room set up for the ongoing investigation, the energy was different now. Less emotional. More surgical. Meri was present, but quieter than ever. Not withdrawn. Just done chasing the truth. Now it was catching up on its own. Kody sat across from the investigators, shoulders slumped. A man no longer trying to defend anything, just trying to understand how deep it all went. Robyn arrived late. Again. But this time, there was no composure left. No control. Just tension barely held together. An investigator placed a file on the table. Opened it. Slid a photograph forward. A house. Large. Secluded. Beautiful in a way that felt wrong now. Do you recognize this property? The investigator asked. Robyn didn't answer immediately. Her eyes locked onto the image. Her lips parted slightly, but nothing came out. Mrs. Brown, the investigator pressed, this property was purchased in 2020 using funds traced directly from the family trust. Kody's head snapped up. What? He looked at the photo, then at Robyn, then back again. You told me that money went into stabilization, he said, his voice low but shaking. You said it was for the family. Robyn finally spoke. It was, but even she didn't sound convinced. The investigator didn't interrupt. Just turned another page. Mortgage-free. Purchased outright. No disclosures. No shared ownership. A pause. Would you like to explain that? The room felt smaller. Tighter. Like the walls themselves were closing in. Meri watched quietly. Because this right here, was what it had always been about. Not just betrayal in words, but betrayal in actions. Kody stood abruptly. You bought a house, with our money? Robyn shook her head quickly. No, it wasn't like that. Then what was it like? He snapped. For once, just tell the truth. That word again. Truth. The thing everything had been orbiting around, avoiding, reshaping, and now unable to escape. Robyn's shoulders dropped. Completely. Like something inside her finally gave way. I didn't think it would come out, she whispered. And that was it. Not denial. Not explanation. Just admission. Kody stepped back slowly. Like the distance between them had finally become visible. Meri looked down briefly. Not in satisfaction. Not in victory. But in quiet acknowledgement. Because the truth didn't need her anymore. It was standing on its own. The investigator closed the file. This property will be seized pending further review. Another pause. And added to the list of contested assets. Robyn didn't react. Because at this point, there was nothing left to hold on to. Kody sat back down heavily, running his hands over his face. I thought we were building something, he said, barely audible. Meri spoke softly from across the room. You were. He looked up, confused. Just not for everyone, she finished. That landed deeper than anything else. The session ended shortly after, but no one rushed to leave. Because what had just surfaced changed everything. Again. Outside, the headlines were already evolving. Secret property exposed. Trust funds used for hidden asset. Case deepens. But inside, it was quieter. Robyn sat alone for a moment longer, staring at nothing. Because the story she had controlled for so long was no longer hers to tell. Kody walked out without saying another word. Not to her. Not to anyone. And Meri? She stood last. As always. She picked up her folder, though now it felt lighter. Not because the burden was gone, but because it had finally been shared. As she stepped outside, the noise hit again. Questions. Cameras. Chaos. But she kept walking. Because the truth didn't need to be loud. It just needed to exist. Next part hook. With the hidden property uncovered, investigators begin linking multiple shell accounts tied to outside advisors, and one name keeps appearing. A financial consultant who may have helped orchestrate everything from the beginning. Who is he? What does he know? And when he's brought in to testify, will he protect Robyn or expose the entire operation? Because the deeper they go, the clearer it becomes, this was never just a family betrayal. It was a system. The courtroom sits in a silence that feels different now, no longer heavy with tension, but sharpened by truth. Meri's words linger in the air like something irreversible, something that cannot be edited, softened, or spun. Even the judge seems to pause longer than usual before speaking, as if weighing not just the facts, but the impact of everything that has finally come to light. When he does speak, his voice is calm, but there's a gravity beneath it that signals the shift everyone feels. Mrs. Brown, he says slowly, this court acknowledges not only the financial discrepancies and evidentiary findings, but the pattern of behavior that has now been clearly established. His gaze moves briefly toward Kody and Robyn. What began as a matter of contractual and fiduciary review has evolved into something far more serious: systematic exclusion, misrepresentation, and potential fraud. Robyn's shoulders tremble, but she doesn't speak. For the first time, there's no interruption, no defense. Just quiet. Meri remains standing, her posture steady. She doesn't look at them anymore. She doesn't need to. The judge continues, before this court moves toward final determinations, I will allow one final opportunity for statements from the defendants. His eyes land firmly on Kody. Mr. Brown, if there is anything further you wish to disclose, now would be the time. Kody exhales slowly, like a man who has already lost everything and is only now realizing the full weight of it. He rises, but there's no confidence left in him, only honesty, raw and unfiltered. I thought I was holding the family together, he begins, his voice strained. I told myself that every decision, every compromise, it was for the greater good. He shakes his head faintly. But the truth is, I stopped listening. I let things happen because it was easier than confronting them. Easier than admitting we were breaking. He glances at Meri, but she doesn't return the look. I failed her, he says quietly. Not just as a husband, but as a partner in everything we built. And I don't think there's anything I can say now that fixes that. The courtroom absorbs his words, but there's no reaction, no sympathy, no outrage. Just acceptance of what's already been proven. The judge nods once, then turns to Robyn. Mrs. Brown. Robyn hesitates before standing. Her composure is gone now, replaced by something far more fragile. When she speaks, her voice is barely steady. I never meant for it to go this far, she says. I thought if I could just manage things, guide things, I could keep us from falling apart. Tears streak down her face again. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the line. I stopped seeing what it was doing to her. She finally looks at Meri, her voice cracking. I was wrong. Meri's expression doesn't change. The judge allows a brief silence before speaking again. Intent does not erase impact, he says firmly. And in this case, the impact has been substantial financially, emotionally, and legally. He straightens slightly, signaling what everyone now understands is coming. This court will move to finalize its rulings. The air tightens. First, he begins, regarding the financial findings, this court orders full restitution to Mrs. Meri Brown for all misappropriated funds, including documented transfers, concealed distributions, and associated damages. A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Second, the court finds sufficient evidence to pursue further investigation into potential fraud and misrepresentation. These matters will be referred for criminal review. Robyn closes her eyes. Kody lowers his head. Third, the judge continues, his tone unwavering. The court acknowledges the demonstrated pattern of exclusion and manipulation within the family structure as it pertains to shared assets and contractual obligations. Mrs. Brown is hereby granted full legal separation from all remaining joint financial entities tied to the family trust, effective immediately. Meri exhales, quiet, controlled. Not relief exactly. Something deeper. And finally, the judge says, his voice softening just slightly, this court recognizes that while it can address legal wrongs, it cannot undo personal harm. That, unfortunately, lies beyond its reach. He lifts the gavel. But today, it has ensured that the truth, at the very least, has been recognized. The gavel comes down. Court is adjourned. The sound echoes like a final chapter closing. For a moment, no one moves. Then the room slowly begins to stir, reporters rushing out, whispers breaking through the silence, the weight of everything settling into reality. Kody remains seated, unmoving. Robyn sinks back into her chair, completely undone. But Meri gathers her folder, turns and walks toward the exit. No hesitation. No looking back. Because for the first time in years, she isn't being written out of the story. She's the one ending it. The second part is over. Kindly like this video and subscribe the channel. The next part coming very soon.